Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Kermitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week we watched the behind-the-scenes special, The Muppets on Puppets, as well as some clips from their companion pieces, Muppet Puppet Plays, and The Muppets Make Puppets.
Beautiful. You did that.
All right, I'm assuming Sam cut out the 8 takes that it took me to try and get those words out, and that one sounded perfect. All right. Before we get into that, though, I found myself feeling a weird feeling this week, Sam, and I want to check in with you to see if you're feeling the same thing at all. So we scaled back a bit what we watched this week compared to previous weeks, and I found myself craving more Muppet content.
Yeah, this wasn't quite enough for me.
I didn't expect that feeling to happen. I found myself wanting to go watch other Muppet things that weren't even part of this week's assignment. Like I went and watched their carpool karaoke episode with Jason Sudeikis, and I went and watched some of the ABC sitcom, and it was just like,
Well,
I can't get enough Muppets.
Okay, I didn't actually do anything about it. I just thought, this was kind of okay, I guess. I'd rather watch something more fun with the Muppets in it. There's also not a lot of stuff that they were doing at the same time as this, aside from, like, we've watched everything now. We're in 1969 or 8 or 9, and we've watched everything. So there's nothing we could have done without jumping into the next phase of the Muppets.
Yeah, we are definitely between this week and next week wrapping up the 60s in their entirety. There's nothing else left to talk about. We've talked about all their TV appearances through this point. We've talked about everything except pretty much what we're talking about today and Sesame Street.
Yeah.
And then we're full on into the 70s.
And Sesame Street was just the tail end of 69 too, I think. So
it was November 69 is when it premiered. So yeah, barely in the 60s. I'm excited to see some of the actual storytelling things that we have not yet seen, like the Great Santa Claus Switch and Hey Cinderella, and some of that stuff that just is completely... I've seen pictures from it, and that's about all I've seen.
I'm going to make a prediction that I'm going to hate all of the fairy tale things. That's my guess.
Oh, interesting.
All the Muppets, the Tales from Muppet Lands or whatever.
Whereas I feel like I will be very surprised if I find anything that I strongly dislike from here on out.
I just feel like he would have kept doing it if people liked it. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense. Maybe we'll find out more about that when we're actually talking about those things.
Yeah, but we're not talking about them this week.
No, we're talking about the Muppets on Puppets, which was, Sam, why don't you tell us?
This synopsis is pretty short and simple. Jim Henson walks us through the history of puppetry around the world, then dives into his brand of Muppet puppetry. He and his whole team, Don Celine, Frank Oz, the other guy, Jerry Jewell, teach us how to make puppets. They show us what's happening behind the scenes during a Muppet skit. So there's a camera situated behind the piece of plywood or whatever they're standing behind, and you get to see them jostling past each other as they perform a skit. Then they show us how they build their different characters and how eye placement is so important. But a lot of it is pretty much based around what I said before, where they're teaching us different techniques to make puppets of our own, and then doing little skits with the puppets that they've made in those segments. And it's basically like a PBS special. It's like something you turn on PBS on a Saturday afternoon and see Jim Henson making some puppets with his weird hippie friends. And then aside from that, we watched The Muppets Make Puppets and Muppet Puppet Plays, as Matt said. And then there was a third Lost program, but these were sequels, basically. Or maybe more like an expansion of the Muppets on Puppets, different segments, because we watched a lot of The Muppets Make Puppets. And that's just them making puppets, which they already did in Muppets on Puppets.
Yeah, it felt like sort of they had this hour-long special, and they were like, okay, can you make some half-hour versions of a similar thing? And so there's some of it that's kind of repetitive, some of it that's brand new, but I think it was probably, okay, let's do this again in color and shorter.
And then I have a little bit of context for this. So this is 1968, and Jimmy Dean had ended 2 years prior to this. Sesame Street is a little bit more than a year away, I believe, but it must be in production at this point. Like, I'm sure they know that they're in Sesame Street, because Sesame Street was developed not with the Muppets in mind, but they were added in later. And they also are probably working on Hey Cinderella, which is the first Muppet TV special that we talked about a minute ago. So I assume what is happening right now is that Jim Henson and his Muppet people are just hanging out in New York, still making loads of commercials and being on TV every now and then and working on Sesame Street. And probably, I couldn't find a lot of why this special existed, but I assume they were commissioned to make it by some public television station or something like that.
Yeah, and it seems like the other, like the spin-off shows were because this did so well.
Yeah.
Because they said this one won the National Education Television Award for Best Educational Television Show of 1968. And then, according to Muppet Wiki, in early 1969, Henson taped 3 additional shows, and these were in color, aired on various public stations, and the programs were broadcast by public TV stations as part of another show. So this was they were segments on this other show. But they also mentioned on Muppet Wiki that there was thoughts of spinning this off into a regular series. Mm-hmm. I think, again, this was like Jim Henson wanting a TV show, always wanting to do something on TV. But that kind of just didn't go anywhere. It was going to be called The World of the Muppets.
And this is specifically for kids. Like, as opposed to everything else they've done so far, this is not like for everybody. This seems more to be specifically targeted at children.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things that would be sort of a dream come true for certain people, of just like, oh, I've learned a lot about puppetry, about how to make puppets, about the history of puppetry, and I'd like to share that knowledge with somebody. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do it every week on this show, sponsored by General Foods. And it didn't work out because I honestly don't know how you make this a weekly series.
I don't either. And I don't know how you do it without hiring some hosts and stuff that aren't like 3 or like 4 weird hairy dudes who don't have any charisma, really.
And I think you would run out pretty quickly.
Yeah, he covered it pretty much all. And then he made 3 episodes that covered it all again.
They even make some like of the same style of puppets. So I'm like, if you're going to do this every week, you're going to have to come up with some like new types of puppets.
Yeah, maybe
to
Don
teach
Celine
kids how
would
to
be
make.
like, this week we're going to teach you how to make the interior mechanism to make your puppet's eyes blink.
Don Celine seems like the most like begrudging Muppet member.
I don't
like
think
I'm sure
so.
he really enjoyed what he was doing and was really good at it. But his personality is so like quiet and reserved that he has these like wacky hippies around him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, let's make a serious puppet.
Oh,
like,
he makes them so fast too.
Oh, it's like,
That's amazing.
like Jim is just like talking for a few minutes, and you just see out of the corner, like in the corner of the frame, Don Celine's like starting to glue stuff together. He's done, and obviously he put some eyes on it while like Jim's finishing talking, and he just like has Wilkins essentially there in his hand in like
cool.
5 seconds. And Jim's just like talking about the foam for 5 minutes of like, no, but you don't understand. This foam is really cool.
And the fabric is great too.
Yeah. Which it's nice to sort of see these things get talked about from the source, because these are things that you hear about if you're in the puppet game, like Sam and I kind of are sometimes, where you're looking up how to make puppets, you're watching people make puppets. People will talk about the Henson stitch or why it's important to use the right kind of felt so that the stitch is hidden when you're sewing your puppets together, or the right kind of foam to use and how to glue it and all this stuff. And so hearing this from way back in the 60s, and it's essentially the same way people still recommend
that really
you
struck
want
me
to
too.
make puppets.
It's like everybody watched this special and they just like retyped that on all their blogs and stuff about making puppets.
Yeah, like I've looked up before, like how to make a Kermit puppet for yourself, and it's essentially exactly what they're telling you back then, and people are still doing it the exact same way with like the contact rubber cement stuff that you put on the foam and make sure it dries and then hold it together. And it always looks, especially in this series, Don Celine makes it look so easy that I always want to try it, but I'm sure I would get very frustrated if I actually started gluing foam together.
You always cut the foam smaller than your freaking hand, but somehow Don Celine knew exactly how to make it perfectly hand-sized.
Yeah, I should mention, I meant to tease this up front a little bit, but Sam and I made some puppets this week. I was inspired as I was watching through these, and I texted Sam saying, what if we made puppets from just the things around our house?
You would have made puppets anyway.
I don't know if I would have. I think I would have really wanted to, but I had to give myself an excuse to do it.
Yeah.
So, we're going to reveal those to each other maybe in a little bit as we talk about this. And we'll also make sure to tweet out photos so that way we're not just talking about a visual thing that you can't see.
Yeah. And we did that because during the puppet making section, they're not just working with foam and stuff. They make a puppet out of a potato. They make a puppet out of a spoon. They make puppets out of socks. So that's why we made puppets.
And I'm always surprised at, again, that Jim Henson's soul we've talked about when it comes to his puppets. The design, the Don Celine building of them, where I know I could take a plastic spoon, draw some eyeballs on it, put a little piece of fabric over it, and it won't feel like a Jim Henson thing. But just in those like few seconds where he draws the right shape of eyes and the right personality and the right movement, I'm like, yeah, no, put that in the Muppet Show. I believe it.
He really did. He built like a whole career around being really good at drawing eyes.
And I think Don Celine obviously is a big part of that and a big part of making these puppets even better and more advanced. But he had that early on. Like Kermit has that.
Yeah.
And I think obviously like Yorick and Sam and some of the other early puppets didn't have that as much, but it was something he was aware of. But that is something that I've also realized when looking through different books of Jim Henson's sketches and what they eventually turn into via Don Celine. Where you look at some Muppets and you're like, this is amazing. Don Celine created this amazing character that looks exactly how it should look. Like Ralph is a perfect design and all these things. And sometimes you look at Jim Henson's original sketches that inspired Don Celine and you're like, oh boy. Like,
I was thinking the same exact thing. Yeah.
like the early rough Ralph sketches.
Yeah. His
have
head's
like
all
these,
flat and he has teeth.
He has sharp teeth. And I'm like, I'm glad Don Celine was there to sort of filter out what was not great about those Ralph sketches. And I think the same thing with a lot of the early Sesame Street Muppet designs that you see sketches that Jim Henson made. And Don Celine was just like the perfect translator to go, okay, I see the spirit of what you're trying to make there.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it palatable.
Yeah. I wonder if when he presented them to Jim was ever like, well, where's his little teeth? Or if he was just like, okay, whatever. You obviously know what you're talking about. He won't have creepy little teeth. Another thing about seeing him build those puppets so fast, and like you just mentioned Wilkins, I think kind of clears up a question we had about destroying the puppets. Because it seems like they all knew how to make the puppets in like an hour tops, probably. So maybe
I think especially
those
simpler ones that were just a little bit of foam and some felt on top of it.
Yeah.
I think when you have ones like Rolf and stuff, it probably gets a little bit more complicated if you want to ruin a Rolf.
Yeah.
But if you're just ruining a Wilkins who wasn't on color most of the time, like you could destroy his felt pretty easily and replace it pretty quickly.
Right.
It probably was a thing where they had Don Celine on set during those commercials to be like, hey, Don, can you refelt Wilkins for us?
Yeah, I wonder if there's some Muppets that they don't destroy, if there's like off-limit Muppets that they can never build again or something.
Yeah, like I wonder what the most precious, fragile Muppet would be. I know Big Bird is one that they've talked about. There's a great documentary called I Am Big Bird, all about Carol Spinney and like the rise of Big Bird as a character, but mostly about Carol Spinney. And there's a moment in there that's very, very sad where they were doing some, I think, international performance somewhere in Germany, somewhere, I don't remember. But they had the Big Bird costume like left in a back room before they were going to go on stage. And when they came in a couple hours later or something, a bunch of students had like gotten into the room and had like plucked Big Bird.
No.
Like people had been taking feathers. And Carol Spinney in that moment is so sad talking about like walking in and essentially seeing his like plucked friend lying there.
That's horrible.
Yeah. The I Am Big Bird is a very good, but at times very emotionally like impacting documentary because Carol Spinney did not have an easy life either. And we'll talk a lot more about him as we get into Sesame Street and stuff. But I think that's one of those where for me, I'm like, okay, Big Bird feels off limits as far as like how drastically you're going to affect a
you
Muppet's
can't dump
appearance.
a can of paint on Big Bird.
And this might be like a Sesame / other Muppets type of dividing line because I feel like on the newer like ABC sitcom, a lot of stuff gets like pies in the faces or slime poured on. And like
pies.
the Muppets are a lot more impacted physically
Yeah.
on the ABC sitcom than they are on other things.
But I suppose they're probably pies made out of not cream. They're probably like soap or something that it washes out.
We need to meet some puppet makers.
Yeah, and get some answers to these questions. Maybe they
Yeah.
address them eventually, but we got to know how pies get in people's faces.
The hard-hitting questions.
So, did you like this whole thing?
I found it charming, especially in specific sections. Like, I found the opening with Rolf trying to perform a puppet really charming.
Yeah.
Like, Rolf has a hand puppet on his hand and is trying to, like, bring life into this puppet and do puppet stuff, and he can't figure out how to do it successfully.
Or the puppet's just being willful and will not do what he wants it to do.
It's a little unclear if that puppet also has a life and a personality behind it, but seeing a puppet control a puppet is a nice level of meta that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And then that curtain gets even further peeled back when Rolf is talking to Jim Henson, and Jim Henson is like, "You're a puppet. Look down." And he's like, "Oh, there's a guy down there."
I feel like they took that part a little too far for my taste.
You didn't like talking about there's a guy down there?
He was so sad when he discovered that he was a puppet. That was mostly
There was some existential stuff happening in that moment. It's also interesting to hear, like, essentially thinking about when we're talking about how many takes they had to do of this stuff, that had to have been pre-recorded because that's Jim Henson's voice talking to Jim Henson.
It's very impressive. I'm sure nobody even realized what was happening at the time when they were watching it because they don't draw any attention to it.
I think that highlights one of my favorite sections, which is the behind-the-scenes thing that you mentioned in your recap, because they do this story that's a little long. It's like a Cinderella story that Rolf is reading, and basically the fairy tale is going wrong at every turn. Every time he's trying to tell the story of Cinderella, all of a sudden it becomes Hansel and Gretel, or it becomes the Three Bears, or something like that. And it's all, like, it's fine. It's not that exciting. But then they take the camera and turn it around, and you get to see parts of that sketch from behind the stage.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I was imagining as far as like the making of that scene goes, but it looks fairly simple and like not a ton is really going on. But everything behind the scenes is so so chaotic of where they're jumping around and dancing around each other. They're reading the script off of the back of the stage. Frank Oz is having to puppeteer and move the next page of the script. They're doing the special effects there.
And they're watching themselves on the little monitor to see.
Yeah. Like the fact that they're like reading a script as they're trying to watch and perform and think about what's coming up next. It stresses me out, but it also made me like respect a lot, like seeing it. I think they did it the right way of like showing us the sketch first.
Yeah.
And then following it up with like, here's how we just made that thing you just watched. For me, I'm like, oh, wow, that's, as someone, again, who has used puppets very little in any sort of professional type of way, I can't imagine having to move around and think about doing that many things all at once.
I liked this fine, but I did not like that story that they told, where they did like the story they told before they went behind the scenes.
Right.
Was so long and boring. And I thought all the skits were kind of not very good.
What did you think of the Sunday Painter sketch?
That I didn't like that much. That was also too long.
I love that one.
I thought I think the piano music was really getting to me.
You can tell they were playing it live on set because at one point he asks, Dennis, can you play some puppet making music? Which Dennis is probably like, what the hell, Jim? Puppet making music? That doesn't exist.
The piano just got to be a little much during Sunday Painter. I didn't hate Sunday Painter. Maybe I kind of did. It just wasn't, it was too long. They were all too long.
I like the Sunday Painter one a lot. For me, the ones that didn't work, I think you're right that the Cinderella one doesn't really work. And I think it's there solely so they can show off the behind the scenes of how they did this kind of thing. And
so it should have been shorter, and they should have shown the whole behind the scenes. It could have been half as long. Then you could have watched them do the whole thing again behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's true. They also do another fairy tale story at the end using the puppets that they made during the handmade make things from around your house type puppets.
Yeah.
And that one also didn't really work that well for me.
No, that one was weird too because it had little snippets of Tinker D in it. Like the princess's name was the same and the witch's voice was the same.
I think for me, the ones that work well in this are maybe the ones that are less important. Like the segments where it's a little bit more off the cuff and maybe things aren't going exactly as they thought. Like there's a section where Jim Henson is going to show off some rod puppets, which are these like soldiers that are really overly complicated with like 8 different little pulley mechanisms to
They
keep
like
these
raise
things going.
they're like in a line, and they all can like raise their guns and shoot powder out of them, right? Is that what they do? Yeah.
Yeah, and so these were actually, I don't know if they were made for this, but I know that these were a part of a show that I think Jim and Frank did in Germany, I think it is. Or
They look German.
They did these a lot in the early 60s and mid 60s. Once like Frank Oz was on board, they toured and did some shows with these things. And at one of the puppet conventions or something is actually where Carol Spinney saw this. He saw them perform this and was like, oh, wow, I have to talk to those guys. So again, like we've said before, most of these people just met at puppet conventions and became friends and then worked together forever.
I feel like that's why your parents tell you to like, you need to walk down the street and like hand out your resume, because it really did used to work that way. There were like 4,000 people in the world, and they all were like looking to give jobs to each other.
Yeah, you just make a good enough puppet and you're going to be a big bird forever.
And you'd be on TV.
But yeah, there was a skit that went along with these puppets where basically a drill sergeant was giving them directions, so they were all doing the same thing. And then at the end, they like, of course, because it's a Jim Henson sketch, they all turned and shot the drill sergeant at the end. But I like that section because he's showing off this overly complicated thing, and it's not going.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
Not really. And he's clearly, I feel like it's like one of those moments you get to see the pressure of like, I feel like if he had 8 takes, he would have done this 8 times to get it right. But it feels like he probably only had a couple takes to try and get that right. And it just is too complicated of a puppet mechanism that there's just no way to do that very smoothly.
When you put it that way, one of my criticisms with it was that Jim Henson hosting this is so monotone and he looks so bored about everything. But he does have an admirable amount of like keeping his cool when things are going wrong.
There's one moment where he slips a little bit. He's trying to draw. I think for me, I'm always assuming if there's a puppet that's like fucking with him, it's probably Frank Oz, because that just seems like their personality is that Frank Oz is trying to make Jim break a little bit. And our pal Rufus, the dog puppet, gets to come back in the...
With no voice.
No voice. He has a very weird panting
like
kind
a
of
raspy,
sound.
panty voice, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sad because, again, I think we talked about this before, of Rufus losing his voice.
Well, and they had filmed Hey Cinderella at that point, I think. And Rufus is in that a lot. And nobody had ever seen Rufus before. Like you said that one time, that was a pilot when he had the voice. So, and
so they just decided this character no longer speaks. Jim even refers to him as like one of our dog puppets.
Yeah.
So he's just like part of this cast.
It does seem like he likes him, though. It gives him a little pat on the head. Like maybe he's reminiscing about what Rufus could have been.
But there is the moment when he's trying to draw eyes on like a paper cup or something to like make a puppet, and Rufus kind of like hits his arm or something like that, and he snaps at Rufus just a little bit in like a playful way. He's like, "Don't hit my arm when I'm drawing.
When I'm drawing eyes."
Yeah. It's definitely like a message to the puppeteer, not to Rufus, in that moment of just like, I'm trying to do this. We don't have that many takes. Please let me get through this.
Yeah. The Muppet Puppet Plays and Muppets Make Puppets, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Those clips on the second playlist you made, those are way more fun, I think, because I think Frank Oz is he's a bigger presence in the whole thing, and he is very chaotic, and he will interrupt Jim, and he will like be a little bit rude and like grab his arm and stuff while he's trying to do things. And he's better at ad-libbing than Jim is, I think. Like,
absolutely.
Way better than Jim is.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this so many times, but like Jim Henson is somebody who wants things to go correctly. He wants things to stay on schedule. He has this idea of how things should be. And then you have this chaotic, neutral Frank Oz show up to just like say like, well, what if Grover was just really annoying throughout this whole segment where you're trying to talk about monsters?
That was my favorite part.
It's
at
very
the end,
good.
And then, so a very early version of Grover pops up while Jim's talking about monsters for some reason, but he's just obnoxious. And then at the end he says, well, I'm going to go do bad things. That was very funny.
Yeah, he's like trying to sell. I like this version of Grover a little bit where his character is that I'm a bad guy. And Jim's like, you're not a bad guy. We all like you. He's like, no, I'm real bad. I'm a rebel.
Yeah. But everybody, like, if you were going to make this into a show, I would like a continuing show. I would say maybe let Frank Oz be the host or the co-host or something. If you have to stick with one of these mustachioid hippies as the host of your show, but otherwise, maybe you get somebody in there who's a little bit more like, and what are you working on over there, Jim? Somebody who can keep things moving along.
Yeah.
Like when you try to do the segment, like there's that one where Splurge, the big monster, smashes up the set, and Jim's just like, now, Splurge, you have to come back and clean this up. How can you be so bad at acting when you're not a puppet?
I think that's also one of those things where nothing else like that really happens in Muppets on Puppets, but suddenly Splurge walks through the set and destroys it, and then later on is there cleaning it up. I think you're absolutely right that Jim Henson in that moment clearly wrote an acting moment for himself.
Yeah.
And is not an actor.
And then is thinking while he's doing it, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have been Rolf right now.
I agree that it's a very monotone, kind of flat thing. And good or bad, I think that's set from the very beginning because the first line is, hello, I'm Jim Henson and I'm a puppeteer. And you're just like, all right, Jim, nice to meet you. Like, you seem stoked to be here.
Yeah. You seem very excited that somebody's making you make a public access television special.
It seems like one of those where I think he really wants to make it. But if anyone like raised their hand, he'd be like, no, questions are at the end. Let me get through this.
Yeah.
This is my time. Like, especially when he's giving the lessons on the old like historical puppets of this one was made in India or this one is 300 years old.
That
and
part
these
was
kind
pretty
of things.
cool, actually.
I like it, but I do still get that teacher vibe where I feel like if anyone interrupted him, he's like, nope, we're starting again. Everyone, back to one.
That's true. It was like an art history class. I liked that because it felt like a lot of what we've been learning about him. Like he was telling us everything that he learned when he went to Europe and like showing us in his brain when that switch flipped between him just kind of liking to do silly puppet shows and like what he went and learned that impacted him so much.
Yeah, he was able to sort of respect puppetry more than he did before because, as we've talked about, it was just sort of a means to an end to get onto TV. And once he had that, he did what I think is the admirable thing where he threw himself into puppetry and learned about it and came to really respect the art of it.
Yeah, it is funny because it did all start from that like want ad for the junior morning show or whatever it was called. But it could have said like, we need a clown. And he probably would have said, I'll be a clown. And then he would have ended up being the best clown of all time.
Yeah, Bozo the Clown would have been Jim Henson.
Yeah. Oh, that seems very likely to me, actually.
Yeah, and I think we just have that want ad and we have Jane to thank for it because she was also making, I believe she was making puppets or making like sets and things as part of a class at college. And so
he applied for that class because of the TV show. She had just already applied for that class regardless of the TV show, I think. Another interesting thing is that at the end of the Nursery Rhymes Muppet Puppet Plays clip, I think we get what I would assume to be the only recorded actual Yorick line with his real voice. When he pops out because he has a candle on his head and he's like, congratulations or happy birthday or whatever he says.
Yeah. I guess we haven't heard him speak in any of the other Sam and Friends.
Just eat and lip sync.
Yeah, it was nice to see some of the Sam and Friends pop up. We see Harry the Hipster there, where Jim is trying to describe the difference essentially between the sock puppets and the personality that comes with just this little simple sock puppet, and then Frank Oz being chaotic with the little girl puppet off to the side of just like, here's a different kind of Muppet. And I think it's, again, I know at some point we'll stop seeing these Sam and Friends characters pop up as much, but it is still nice to have them as a part of the sort of like the company of actors that they have at their disposal.
Well, I didn't go back and check this out, but what I found out was that in Tinker D, there is a character who is Yorick in a knight's helmet. He's like the guard of town. So I didn't go back and check and see if they had the same voice, but that could have been the case too. That could have been technically Yorick in a speaking role.
I think one thing to note, as well as if anyone wants to go watch these after we were talking about them, is that they are not entirely available as far as I have found, where we should have an hour-long thing of the Muppets on Puppets, and then a half-hour Muppet Puppet Plays, and then a half-hour Muppets Make Puppets to watch. What we ended up with was like a 54-minute Muppets on Puppets, which seems to maybe only be missing like one or two small segments. They reference some finger puppets that we don't see.
Oh, right.
And then there's like a hand performance, which is like one of the same ones they did on the like Douglas show that we don't see either. So there's a little bit cut out of that, but not much. But then with the Muppet Puppet Plays and the Muppets Make Puppets, there's definitely a lot missing that we're not able to see.
Yeah.
Thankfully, people have cataloged this, and it seems like the main things we're missing were they do the old have a whatnot Muppet change its facial expressions and do the different personalities thing, which they do in Muppets on Puppets. They've done on multiple TV appearances. We've seen this bit before. It ain't really new. It is always impressive that they're able to sort of make such a vast personality change that quickly with some of these
except
things.
they always go through the same set of personalities.
You're not wrong. The more times you see it, the more you are realizing that like, oh, this isn't like Don Celine's just tossing random things on a puppet and then Jim has to react to it.
Yeah, which I think is interesting too, because it's just like, no matter how like when something on TV or whatever looks polished, it's just because the people did it a million times to make sure it was right. There are very few people who are talented enough to do all of this off the cuff and do something new for every appearance.
One thing we didn't have to miss out on, which I think is one of the more upsetting sections of any of these, is Old Paperface.
I liked Old Paperface.
Old Paperface is a puppet that they create out of an envelope that they just sort of like fold an envelope, draw some eyes on it, and then toss this really distressing wig and dress on.
Yeah.
And it just...
She looks like a Halloween, like a Halloween decoration or something.
Like something out of a horror film.
Yeah.
Like
she's got a sad little, like a little dead girl dress on too.
Well, and it's like her eyes are outlined in red, and then her hair's all matted, and it just seems like if she like ran at the camera, it would just be a terrifying jump scare moment. And they keep her around throughout like the episodes of like introducing the fairy tale things, and it's just like, I don't like her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when Jim finishes making her, if Frank had been like, you made a forbidden puppet, Jim. We have to bury this.
Burn it alive. Burn it alive and bury the ashes.
But who I do love is Potato Head Grape Nose.
I thought it was Pearhead Grape Nose.
Pearhead Grape Nose, excuse me.
I think he at one point calls himself a potato
He
head,
thought
and Jim's
he
like,
was
no,
a potato
you're
head.
a pearhead.
Yeah, that's the Pearhead.
No, he's very cute and just a small, cute personality. And he gets to talk to like fake Kermit. There's like when they're showing how to make like a sock puppet,
right?
They use a green sock and put like these pink bloodshot eyes on it.
On him, yeah.
And it's sort of like a weird, like stoned version of Kermit a little bit.
It would be, if Kermit didn't already exist, it would be like the origin of Kermit.
But Kermit does exist at this point, and this is around that point where they've definitely started to refer to Kermit as a frog, but he's still in one of these called a frog-like Muppet.
Yeah, he's called frog-like, but then in that skit right after it, Rolf calls him a frog like 3 different times.
It feels like they were pretty sure he was going to be a frog at this point.
Yeah.
Because Johnny Carson had already called him Kermit the Frog. They've been referring to him as a frog-like Muppet. Mm-hmm. But I think we're working towards the Frog Prince sort of being Kermit's like celebration of finally, you are a frog. Here is your frog.
Well, then there's that other part where the witch, I can't remember her name, the witch from Tinker D, is like, I'm going to turn everybody watching into a frog. And then Kermit says, and then nobody turns into a frog. And she's like, well, did anybody turn into a frog? And Kermit says, I'm a frog. Dude's a frog by now.
Dude's a frog.
For some reason, Jim doesn't want him to be a frog. But then when he puts on the puppet, Kermit is like, I am a frog. I got a very odd vibe from Kermit in this one. Because he had already done his TV appearances where he was like the boss of the Muppets. But this one feels like a few steps back for him. Probably because Ralph was the big star, had recently gotten done being a big star. But also Rolf fucking hates Kermit. And they hate each other, and they bite each other, and they're like rude to each other, and they insult each other. Yeah, they have a full-blown fight. And like, if it wasn't Jim fighting against himself, I would think that maybe him and Frank were going through something back there.
Yeah.
But it's almost like these two weird personalities, and Rolf knows the end is near, and Kermit is like, it's almost my time, and they just don't like each other. And I thought that was so sad and strange.
It definitely feels out of place with a lot of these other segments where, Like, you have a very sweet moment where Rolf reminds the kids watching to stretch.
Yeah.
And just like, you know what? Take a moment, stand up, stretch. It felt like a very Sesame Street type
Well,
of
it's also like what video games do now when you're playing them for too long.
Yeah, like, have you stepped away? Have you looked away from the screen? Maybe you should. But yeah, I think all in all, I enjoyed the experience of watching these. It felt sort of like a break after we watched so many commercials and TV appearances and things that it was kind of nice to take a step back and just watch the more simple, hey, teach us how to make some puppets, Jim, kind of thing. But I am excited to get into more storytelling going forward.
Yeah. It is very PBS-y. It was very lull you to sleep, or like you have this on in the background on a Saturday afternoon, like I said. That just didn't work for me compared to, it was very much a departure from what they have done up until this point, which is all very loud.
Having a different host, like you mentioned, would help a lot because when they're doing the segments, like when they're actually showing how to build the puppet or where they're demonstrating the Southern Kernel and these things, they feel like they're coming alive a bit more and they're getting to have more fun.
Totally.
And if you just had someone to do those interstitials to lead to the next thing, I think it would be something that could have worked as a regular TV series.
Yeah. But it also does feel like a format that Jim will come back to kind of on his own when he's not doing the Muppets, specifically like the Muppet Show cast of characters. He'll do stuff like The Storyteller, which I think is a little bit, it's not educational necessarily, but it is feels more like educational television. And like this feels like his beginning of his transformation into the I think my entertainment needs to have something more behind it, or like I need to teach people about I need to pass on the art of puppetry, or like get people to pay attention to how cool these things can be if you're really thinking about what is happening behind the scenes.
It did, as I was watching it, remind me I was thinking more and more about like my own personal puppet history. We talked about a lot in episode 1, but it reminded me of a couple things that I just completely forgot about. One of which is that my family has had, I mean, it's probably since the 30s, this Charlie McCarthy doll.
Oh.
Like the old Charlie McCarthy marionette ventriloquist dummy doll that I reached out to my mom to ask her about it, and we still have it. I think it's a little worse for wear, but the next time I visit my parents, I'm going to bring it back with me and try to restore it a little bit, clean it up, because I think it's been basically shoved in a box for 30, 40 years.
That's
just collecting
cool.
Dust. He's a little creepy. Cause it's
don't let him don't put him on and then let him take over your personality or something.
Devin already said that he does not get to live in like the living room or anything.
In
like,
anyone's line of sight?
No, he has to be like away in a closet or the garage or something, because he is he's an old creepy ventriloquist owl who has like a crack in his skull.
Oh,
so
no.
He's gonna be upset.
Like that's a Goosebumps book, my friend. You can't do this.
It's like a Goosebumps. It's Slappy from Goosebumps, and it's also
the Twilight Zone.
And the creepy ventriloquist dummies in Toy Story 4.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of precedent for these evil ventriloquist owls
Your
coming
life
back
is
in.
Coming to an end.
But it also reminded me of a similarly creepy, but for other reasons, puppet that I have that I don't even know whose it was. It must have been one of my sisters, and it just got passed down to me. I'm going to show Sam right now this creepy puppet that I have. It is a Goo Goo hand puppet. Gabriella Goo Goo Kids hand puppet is what this is called.
Gabriella Goo Goo.
Something like that.
Okay.
The company is called Gabriella. The puppet itself is a Goo Goo Kids hand puppet.
I don't want
to
see
have this.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's a baby, so you're supposed to like hold it like you're cradling a baby, and then it kind of it's a good puppet.
It's actually, now that I understand what it's supposed to be, it does look like a literally just squeezed out baby.
Yeah, like, and it's like it moves in a creepily like realistic way that I don't love.
It's less creepy when you're doing it right.
Yeah, but it's basically he's made from pantyhose like stretched over a little foam ball.
Yeah.
And his pantyhose is also like ripped, runs a lot.
So his skull is coming out the top of his head.
Yeah, he's got some peeling, like some bad sunburn or something on his skull. But this is a puppet that like my family has had for many, many years, and it's just always been in one of those like keepsake boxes.
Oh, he looks like a Cabbage Patch, I guess. A little bit.
I think it's from that era, because I think it's from like the early 80s that these were popular. And I don't really know
That I would have guessed was from like 1910.
I don't think they go back that far. I think it's an early 80s type thing. But
It looks like that level of haunted toy to me.
But I think it's a successful puppet. Speaking of puppets and how successful they are, how was your puppet making experience, Sam?
I don't have any ancestral puppets. I have the Rolf doll that my mom has that I keep meaning to bring, but I don't. Okay, here's my puppet. You show me yours first. I want to see how embarrassed I should be.
Okay. I'll show you. I actually made 2 puppets. One of the puppets I made is just a little like scrap puppet from some of the extra pieces I had after making my what I think is better puppet. And this guy's just a little puffball with big old googly eyes.
Yeah, I love
he kind of looks like a soot sprite from Totoro.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. But he's just kind of like a nervous, scurrying guy. I think he's just on a plastic spoon. So that was one of the supplies I had.
Do you think Jim Henson would like that puppet?
I think this one could work.
Yeah,
it feels Snurf-like to me. I also tried to like color the stick so he could raise up kind of like a Snurf.
Yeah.
And then peek around and sort of periscoping.
Yeah, he'd say, well, put a couple little eyes on this puffball, and then we got a little guy.
Look at that, just with your eyes, you got the thing. And Donson would be like, yes.
Yeah, Don, you want to put some eyes on that little puffball?
It's like, I've already done it, Jim. I was working while you were talking. My other one, I will just describe what supplies I used before I actually do the reveal.
Yeah.
So I was looking for things around my house. I have a costume box of like past Halloween costumes and stuff. And so I found a sock from the time that I was Jimmy Dugan from League of Their Own. And so I had this like real long baseball sock, this red baseball sock that I used for the body of my puppet here. I had some wristbands from a dodgeball tournament I was in years ago that I used to sort of secure parts of it. And then I also cut a cardboard mouth plate out of some cardboard. I used
like
some
they
googly
teach you
eyes.
in the show.
Exactly. Got to follow the steps. And I don't have a name for this character yet, but I will reveal him to you now.
Did you wrap a rubber band around his mouth?
I did not have any rubber bands. So I used a piece of twine that I tied around his mouth and colored red, so that way you would not see the twine in his mouth. But here's my guy.
Oh, he's very cute.
Yeah, but I spent a couple hours trying to figure out how to make a puppet, and then at the end, I ended up with something that I'm happy with. He looks cute. He works pretty good in motion.
There he goes.
He had some hair. He does not have hair in the current version I'm showing to Sam, but when I post pictures and a video of it, I had some like twine rope hair on him that like moved a lot when he moved, but it was barely stuck on, and as I moved him around, pieces just kept falling off a bunch. So
did you have double stick tape?
I did use double stick tape.
Okay, they tell you to in the show.
I ditched the hair, so now he's just a bald red guy.
You know what I also thought was really cute? When Jim tells you how to sign up for like the Puppeteers of America Guild or whatever.
Oh yeah, which he was apparently the president of at this time.
Oh,
yeah,
didn't even mention it. Humble man.
Yeah. Or he was like, I see the perfect opportunity to tell people.
Send me $10.
Yeah.
I don't think it cost any money. Maybe it did, but
I don't know. But he was the president of it, and later on, apparently, Frank Oz's dad actually became the president of it at a certain point. Fun fact, actually, to add in about Frank Oz real quick, is something I read. I'm reading the Street Gang book, which is about Sesame Street, for next week's episode. But something they mentioned in there that around this time, Frank Oz's number came up for the Vietnam draft.
Oh, yeah. I was going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, like Frank Oz was going to be drafted, but he failed his physical. He was like 4F, so he didn't go to Vietnam. But Frank Oz very easily could have not been around for this era of the Muppets. Like, he could have gone off, been in the army or whatever, and not been around to do these specials, or maybe...
Be Fozzie, maybe, because he would be dead.
Well, there's also that possibility. But I was even thinking of just like, if he went away for 4 years to be in the army, by the time he comes back, if they're already doing Sesame Street or whatever, maybe he's just not along for the ride.
Yeah. Have you ever taken that little thing where it's like, if you were this age in during the Vietnam War, would your number have gotten called? Have you ever taken that?
Oh,
like,
no,
plugged
I
your
haven't.
number in? Mine would have gotten called if I had been of
man.
age. Yeah. Okay, so I definitely didn't make this morning. I made it 2 days ago.
What a weird thing to say.
When you told me to. But so my process was that I had a sock.
Good start.
Some cardboard.
Yep.
And a rubber band.
Boom.
So here comes my guy. I don't have a name for him. But I think he's like an adjunct professor. That's the vibe I get from him. So here
See,
he
mine,
is.
my guy, when he had hair, looked a lot like the Kool-Aid, or not Kool-Aid, but the Hawaiian Punch Man.
Oh,
because he's
Punchy.
red,
Yeah.
but he also had like this flyaway hair, and I was like, it just feels like somebody tried to make a bad Hawaiian Punch character.
Here's
Your
my
guy does. That's a good mouth. He's got a good mouth.
Yeah, I made him a cardboard mouth plate too. And I had a rubber band. I followed the instructions.
Sorry, I tried to go with what I had around the house, and I had twine, but not a rubber band for some reason. His eyes are he looks a little shifty.
I think he's nervous because he's getting because the dean is in his class assessing his performance today.
Yeah, mine seems a bit goofier than yours.
Yeah, you got
as
the
far as,
googly
like,
eye thing going on.
The googly eye, and like if he looks at you from like the corner of his eyes, like judging you a little bit.
Yeah. I don't have googly eyes just sitting around my house like you do for some reason.
You never know when you're gonna need googly eyes.
But if we had done this in 1955, we'd be the most famous people in the world, apparently, because this is just Kermit
That's
the
all
Frog.
you needed.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was trying to make this a little like try and like put some personality into this to see what I could do with like hand movements like Kermit does, and it was limiting to say the least. But like it gets real disturbing when you start distorting it a little bit much, and it becomes a whole other character just by like moving your hand a little bit.
But you talked about Vietnam. Which,
yes, I did.
Speaking of Vietnam,
is that part of your puppet's backstory as well? As he's now a professor, but he's seen some shit.
He was a conscientious objector, so
mine would have failed the physical.
Yeah. His eyes don't focus on anything. Yeah. This was 1968, which I think this like is noticeable it's notable to mark when the decades change. I think to some degree because we're moving into 69 and 70, and the 70s were weird and bad, and especially the late 60s into the early 70s. Like this is the time when hippies really start to culturally be like in the forefront, and like the Black Panther Party, because the draft for Vietnam's been going on forever, but the draft is about to start and is starting up around now. So like music is all protest music. There's like police brutality against people who are doing peace protests all over the place. Martin Luther King had been assassinated like 2 months before this special aired on TV, and then Robert Kennedy was assassinated the month that it aired.
Wild.
Yeah, so that's like what was going on in the world while this was happening, and I think probably why you start to see these more hippie kind of characters, and like the Muppets team starts to look more like hippies, because I think that they were probably getting drawn into that counterculture thing, is my guess. When in the 60s they weren't as much counterculture. They were, but they were also making commercials and working in New York, and like they had beards, but like you knew what kind of dudes they probably were. They were probably going to like board meetings and pitching stuff and like being kind of yuppie-ish sort of. But now it seems like they are much more, they're transitioning into a more laid-back hippie-like personality that they will carry with them for the rest of time, I think.
And I think it's interesting to think about how Sesame Street is where they really start to address some of that stuff. They don't really address it a lot in this current work, obviously. But I can't imagine creating something in the middle of that and not... I'm sure they had to have felt the urge to address it.
Yeah. And even because Jimmy Dean ended in 66, and even back then, like just 2 years ago, they were making fun of people protesting.
Right.
But I would assume maybe not so much anymore. I don't know that for sure, but when you have a draft and like the police are shooting students at Kent State like a year from now, maybe you don't make as much fun of that stuff.
I feel like this will probably end up being a cultural reference that we'll make a couple more times, maybe as we talk about Sesame Street and stuff. But Mad Men really, I think, gives a lot of insight into this era in a good way. And it shows sort of the people who became more radicalized and became a little bit more of the hippie type of people when they all sort of start off in season 1 as this same type of like button down character in the early 60s. And as the 60s go on, the beards start going.
Yeah.
The longer hair starts coming.
Stan is kind of like Jim Henson. Maybe that was part of the inspiration for that character. Because he does start off like a very jerky 60s guy who has very traditional 60s views, and he's trying to fit into that world, but then very quickly turns into like the dumpy beard guy who like believes in social justice and stuff to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew that watching Mad Men would be so invaluable to understanding the Muppets? Yeah, but this is also this is like the summer before the summer of love and Woodstock and stuff too. So that was all just happening right now. The Beatles were going to India and meeting with the Maharishi and
Speaking
all
of becoming hippies,
yeah,
we got the full-on hippie Beatles.
yeah, and then rock turned like psychedelic right around then. So
Interesting.
very weird.
Well, speaking of none of that,
Well, kinda. With your Muppet of the Week, it's a little bit.
yeah, we're gonna get deep into patriotism
Yeah.
here and the American way. This week's Muppet of the Week, for no other reason than he was on my mind, we have Sam Eagle.
He hates hippies.
I mean, I don't know if he ever explicitly stated, I hate hippies.
He hates
but
weirdos.
He hates weirdos. He's all about the American way. And I think if the Muppet performers were other people, he definitely would have leaned more into the patriotism side.
Yeah, he could have been a Jeff Dunham puppet in a different
That's what
life.
I was just thinking. You'd have some very awful things coming out of Sam Eagle's mouth.
Oh, no.
Which I've said both now, Sam the Eagle and Sam Eagle, and that's because there is some disparity in what he is called.
I
and
always
what his
think of him
name
as
is.
Sam Eagle.
I think that too, but for a long time he is called Sam the Eagle, and then other times he is called Sam Eagle. And it seems more in the last few years they have solidly leaned into Sam Eagle as his name. But Sam Eagle, Sam the Eagle, he's an American eagle. He's very patriotic, often acting as the self-appointed moral compass of the Muppets. He tries to keep the Muppets wholesome and educational and classy, often failing at that. But we see him performing this role in many different appearances throughout the Muppet Show, the ABC Muppets sitcom. He is the standards and practices person, making sure that their show stays in line. But he made his debut in the 1975 pilot for the Muppet Show, The Muppets Sex and Violence, which we will get to in a little while. And that's also when a lot of other Muppets debut, which is why I didn't feel bad bumping Sam up earlier, because we like to talk about Muppets when they debut, and we're going to have
a lot to cover.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of Muppets to choose from by the time we get to that. But early on, Sam Eagle was performed by Frank Oz, and he performed him from 1975 through 2000. And like a lot of other characters, we've had this story already on the podcast, handed off to Eric Jacobson, who picked up the reins and handled Sam Eagle from 2005 to present. So there's like a 5-year gap there where they didn't really know who was going to take over Sam Eagle. And in between, there was a couple appearances where Kevin Clash and Drew Massey performed Sam a couple of times. Now, Kevin Clash was the original Elmo. He was Baby Sinclair on Dinosaurs. We'll have a lot to talk about with Kevin Clash at some point. We'll have to figure out how we're going to handle that story exactly. But he is still working with the Henson company in some capacity. He's worked on the new Dark Crystal on Netflix, but for reasons we will get to in the future, he has taken a step back. He is no longer Elmo. And then Drew Massey, who also performed Sam the Eagle, seems like sort of an extra guy that does a lot of the side puppets at Henson. He, I think, is still working there as well, but I don't think he's ever taken over like a main character.
Right.
And then Sam Eagle also recently debuted in his baby form on the new Muppet Babies show, which I watched a little bit of. One, it's adorable. That show is surprisingly
It's kind of
good.
okay.
It's kind of okay.
Okay.
And it's obviously made for a much younger audience than us,
Oh, no,
obviously.
we're screwed.
But it kept my attention in what I was watching. And it's nice to see what they've done with Sam Eagle on that show is he is an introverted kid who, just wants to sit by himself and read some books sometimes and maybe doesn't need to be involved with playtime. And getting the other Muppets to accept that. Everyone else, they're trying to do this pirate adventure and get Sam excited about being on a pirate ship and doing these things. And he's just like, kind of want to read my book, guys. You're bothering me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so they talk about the importance of like me time and that some people don't always want to play. And so I think it's a good use of that character in a way to make him not just like the buzzkill, which I think he easily can be and a lot of other things. But yeah, he continued appearing on in the Muppet Show and A Muppet Christmas Carol, and he's been in pretty much every Muppet thing that has existed since the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
And early on in season 1 of the Muppet Show, his job is basically to introduce Wayne and Wanda, who are a singing duo that are supposed to like bring some class to the Muppet Show. And this is like his segment that he has brought of like, Kermit, I have to bring some class to this show. So I have these singers, Wayne and Wanda, who are here to do that.
Is he officially the censor of the Muppet Show, or did he just like wander in and start to try to do this thing? Does it ever? I'm sure we'll know when we watch the Muppet Show, but
yeah, I think at some point it is a official capacity, because I recently bought some old Muppet Show board games, and in one of them he is wearing a sash that says censor on it.
Okay.
So he is very much there as an official censor to keep things on track. But I think where Sam Eagle starts to get really interesting in a way I didn't know about is when you start to delve into his family life.
okay.
Buckle up. So apparently in the 4th season of The Muppet Show, some of the episodes in the UK were longer because they didn't have the same commercial structure that we do in the US. So there was like 2 minutes per episode that was exclusive to the UK. And in one of those 2-minute sections that we didn't get in the US version, Sam says he was married, but he cannot remember his wife's name.
What?
And they're separated because she flew the coop.
He can't remember her name?
Oh, Sam, it gets so much sadder.
Okay.
In a 2011 interview, Sam revealed his ex-wife's name was Eunice. So now he's apparently remembered it.
He figured it out. He looked it
He
up.
has 2 children
Okay.
who are in college, though neither writes to him.
Oh, no. He's estranged from his whole family?
That might be because his son is studying taxidermy,
Oh, that's alarming.
and his daughter is dating an owl.
Okay.
So apparently that is a
That's-
little bit of a maybe racist.
I think
Sam
that
Eagle?
could be racist. Yeah. The first one, that's disturbing because I assume he's an animal.
I mean, presumably they're all birds.
Yeah.
They're all eagles, because if he's mad about his eagle daughter dating an owl,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. Not his bias against owls, but like
No.
the idea that she's an eagle in that situation. But in the interview, he says he would rather not talk about any of this. So he just alludes to it. He has this very complicated family structure going on.
So much pain in his life.
And this isn't necessarily a new thing. Like, he says this in a 2011 interview, but there's also on the Internet Archive, I was delving back into some like old Henson.com. They had a featured creature section where they would talk about the bio and the stats on certain characters.
The stats?
Well, it says
kind
stats.
of stats do they have?
They don't give his height or weight or anything.
Like strength and energy projection and stuff?
Yeah, the intangibles of Sam Eagle.
Yeah.
But no, they refer to him as a divorced father of 2 children.
What the hell?
Yeah, he's a divorced father of 2 children, one of whom disgraced his father by becoming a taxidermist.
What year was this? It just
This one,
says it.
yeah,
It just
says
is
it-
on the website.
Yeah, on an old version of Henson.com. And he was famous for patriotism, and patriotism.
What?
But yeah, it's
It's canon that he's a divorced father of 2.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, that weirdly feels like they presaged like QAnon and being estranged from your family.
Yeah, I think he would definitely be a Trumper if they let him.
If that Muppet reboot had kept going, there probably would have been an uncomfortable episode where they confronted Sam about his beliefs.
They're talking about voting, and they're like, "Who'd you vote for, Sam?" And he's like, Because I think there are interesting things about Sam that are explored in that ABC Muppet sitcom. At one point, he has this unrequited crush on Janice, and he's very shy and very bad at approaching her. But I think it's interesting that Sam's crush is Janice, who, so far, I assume, on the sort of political spectrum from what Sam Eagle is. But yeah, Sam Eagle, I don't know how I feel about Sam Eagle. I don't think I would get along with Sam Eagle,
No.
But I like when he pops up in things, like in Muppet Christmas Carol, where he plays
He's
young
really funny
Scrooge's
in Muppet
teacher.
Christmas Carol, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about him?
This is maybe not going to make any sense, but he is like a character who somebody who is kind of like annoying would have a t-shirt of that said like, I don't care about your opinions, and he'd have like his arms crossed or something.
Yeah, I could see some non-ironic usages of Sam Eagle in patriotic merchandise.
He falls into, and then we're going to get into some, eventually I'm going to start not liking some Muppets that are very popular. He falls into the same category for me that like Beaker and Animal do, where in the completely abstract form, he is annoying. Like products with him on it are annoying, or like he's got a catchphrase that's kind of annoying, like about the weirdos or something like that. In his stereotypical on merch form, not crazy about.
Yeah, like
But
I'm
like
looking
him.
up official T-shirts, and some of them say things like "a salute to all nations, but mostly America."
Yeah.
and it's like, ooh,
Yeah,
certain people wearing that, I don't necessarily love the visual.
but he's fine. He's funny. We should star rate the Muppets. How many stars would you give Sam the Eagle?
50.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even mean to do that, but that's a perfect answer. Hell, I'd give him 52. I like that guy. 50
I
as
thought you were
well,
saying
not
52.
52.
Yeah, it's like
Maybe
who we add to the
someday.
flag.
Yeah, when we add in all of our
DC, Puerto
territories.
Rico. Yeah.
But Sam wouldn't like that probably.
I don't know if he would. I just automatically assume he's agreeing with every Republican conservative position.
Or he wants every country to be a state in the United States. That could be it.
That feels more accurate.
Yeah.
Of like, why isn't the entire Earth the United States? Well, what non-Muppet things have you enjoyed this past week, Sam?
Well, I watched Tenet. That movie
Oh.
sucks. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not. I've heard so many not great things that I just kind of avoided it.
It's so confusing. It's like a fun story, but their problem is that they explain how the time travel works, and that's all they do for 2 hours. It's just
Ugh.
people like standing around being like, when you go through that door, you're going to come through that door, and you're going to do the same thing you did backwards. And then the guy's like, okay. And then they do it. They explain. It's like when you see a Mission Impossible movie, and they do like the big caper, they do the big like jump. But if you had to watch them plan out the big jump and be like, oh, we need these kind of parachutes, where can we get those? And then one of them, and then like Benji's like, oh, I know a guy in Guam who has these parachutes. And then you watch them go there and be like, we need these parachutes. And then the guy in Guam's like, to get these parachutes, you have to get me a jewel. And then that's all the freaking movie is. And then at the end, it's just so confusing. But I watched Godzilla vs. Kong.
Ayo,
That
what
we said we were going to talk about. I thought it was fine. It didn't have enough Godzilla in it. And in the Monsterverse,
I think their
totally
treatment of
there.
Godzilla was not great.
Yeah, I
in this
love
film.
Godzilla in the Monsterverse because he is so cute, and he reminds me of my cat. And he kind of just is like a big chunky dude who walks around and makes cute faces. But he's such a jerk in this one. I kept thinking that his skin was going to fall off, and he would be Mechagodzilla because he was being such a jerk. But that
Yeah,
never
it sort of
happened.
felt like it was a different Godzilla than the previous couple movies because, yeah, I like Godzilla in those movies. They make him likable in a certain way where you feel
Yeah.
like he is this Earth defender.
Yeah.
And in this, it's just that, like, oh, we've been hiding King Kong from him. If we reveal it, he's going to be mad.
He's going to come murder King Kong instantly. Very
Yeah.
mean.
And so we're going to let them fight, and then he's going to get his head shoved into 1 billion buildings. Because that's
Yeah.
apparently the only way you can beat up Godzilla is they grab him and shove his head into a building. And it's, I felt the same way, where I was like, I did not dislike Godzilla vs. Kong, but I think it might be my least favorite of the MonsterVerse films so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I didn't expect. I also haven't watched all of them recently, but I very much enjoyed the MonsterVerse so far. And again, don't dislike Godzilla vs. Kong, but it's probably my least favorite.
King of the Monsters takes place in such a fun universe that feels so big and sci-fi and weird, and
Yeah.
then this one feels so much smaller than that. Like
It
you don't
feels
really
like they're
get to hang
trying
out with
to-
Monarch or anything like that.
It feels like they're trying to pull back a little bit on King of the Monsters and like make it more tangible and real in ways that I don't need.
No, I need this world where the atomic monsters fight and then heal the earth after they have their fight somehow. And like there's lush jungles all over the place. And like that concept to me is so much more interesting. And like the people trying to figure out a new way to survive with these monsters stomping around. That is more fun to me. And the end of War of King of the Monsters, they're like, well, I guess we'll have to. This is like a brave new world. But then in this one, it's like nobody's seen kaiju or whatever for 5 years, but they were all over the freaking place. Where'd they all go?
Where do you think it'll go next? Because that's kind of my thought of coming out of Godzilla vs. Kong is that all these other ones sort of set up the next movie in a good way of like, okay, here's Kong Skull Island alluding to what might happen, and then King of the Monsters. And in this one, it's like, okay, Kong is the last one on Earth, so if Godzilla finishes him off, Godzilla will be happy forever. And so, things happen, and I don't see the natural leap where they go after this movie.
I think they'll probably just refocus on Godzilla. I think Kong's story is probably over. I think he is happy where he is now. To me, I would think that they still have a lot of characters to introduce, like explore Mothra, even though one Mothra's dead, there's other Mothras. Or
that's the thing is like I want them to lean into the old style of the Godzilla films where it's just like things don't need to make sense.
Yeah,
you can just toss another Kong. Like, oh look, we found another one. Look, we found another Godzilla. Look, we found another Mechagodzilla. We found Son of Kong. Like all these things.
I really want to see Godzilla team up with Rodan. I really want to see him team up with Mothra. I really want to see him team up with Anguirus, like all of his old-timey friends. And I really want to see Gigan, who is like a bird-beaked android monster with hooks for hands, who's really cool looking and scary. I don't know. He'll just keep fighting monsters. That's what'll happen.
Yeah.
There's more monsters to fight. I would almost be surprised if they didn't kind of jump back, like whoever makes the next one, if they didn't kind of jump back to the King of the Monsters universe where he's stomping around and all these other guys are stomping around too.
I think they just take such a hard stance that like Kong is the last one that's pissing him off. So I think, it'll be interesting to see how they revive some of them or reveal that like, oh, nope, we found another group of them. They were hiding out over there. Nobody
they could
saw
all be
them.
in the Hollow Earth, I guess. Like people.
That's true.
That's maybe why they introduced that. But yeah, for something that they set up over the course of like 4 movies, it was a little bit of a disappointment. And maybe they didn't even need to have the bad guy monster show up somehow. Also, Skarsgård which Skarsgård was that? Alexander? Skarsgård? He is so pointless in that movie. I wish that they had just had Bradley Whitford reprise his role as the Hollow Earth expert, and he could have been the one doing all that stuff.
Yeah, I know people have talked about the human characters not being the focus in the Monsterverse, which is somewhat true, but I think in the earlier ones, especially Godzilla's like storyline, the humans are important and I do care about them.
Yeah,
so
they're fun,
to see
too.
the characters from the Godzilla movies not getting like either not coming back at all or being essentially easily deletable from this movie.
Yeah,
it's a little rough.
Very different. Like Millie Bobby Brown's character was very different than she was in the last one.
Which I'm fine with if you get me there. If you like lead me there in some way other than just saying like, yep, it's been a few years. She's a completely different person now.
But for it to be like, sorry, this is the Godzilla podcast, but for it to be like, oh, people who follow Godzilla are crazy. That's kind of how they painted it this time. It's like, dude, Godzilla smashed up the entire world 4 times at this point.
Yeah. Well, and like for only crazy people to think that there was a reason that he suddenly decided to attack one area randomly. It's like, maybe there was a reason. That seems pretty logical to assume that this giant lizard who has not attacked anyone for 4 years suddenly decides to attack one specific company's factory.
Yes.
But nobody else seems to want to look into that except for the 2 people who are labeled crazy.
Yeah.
But,
and then like the subplot with the guy who was piloting, and he was the son of the scientist from the last one.
But they didn't mention that.
But they didn't mention it, so maybe he wasn't. And then, I didn't like that either.
And then you have Lance Reddick, who was like playing like the guy who controls all of Monarch, who's a known actor who's been on Lost and in John Wick and a bunch of other things. And he has one line and is never seen again in the movie, which I'm assuming what I've read is that there was supposed to be more in the beginning of Godzilla vs. Kong that got cut out to get into the story faster, which personally I think you feel, because I think the beginning of Godzilla vs. Kong is way too rushed.
Really rushed, yeah.
So I would have maybe enjoyed some more Monarch scenes in a boardroom explaining what's going on.
Yeah. The director has said that he wanted it to be like less than 2 hours. But to me, if you're going to make a Godzilla movie every like 4 years, you might as well make it really long. That's what I was craving. I wanted it to be so much longer.
Yeah,
and the human characters are not important, but like you said, they are important in the other MonsterVerse movies. So it's not like it's default that the human characters in a Godzilla movie are boring. They just are in this one.
No, and I think the key would have been eliminating some of the human characters and focusing on one batch. Like not having 5 different people doing 5 different storylines that all sort of intersect in a way, but also multiple ones of those you could just eliminate. And the movie does not change.
Or have a more distinct like Team Kong versus Team Godzilla thing, where the people are actually fighting against each other too, to a certain degree.
Right. Like people are disagreeing of whether or not to do this a little bit more than just 5 minutes at the beginning of the movie saying like, I don't know if we should. And it's like, no, we definitely should. It's like, okay, put them on the boat.
Okay. Anyway, how about you? Have you been enjoying anything?
Yeah, my non-Muppet thing I enjoyed this week, and I'm still technically enjoying, this will instantly date this podcast of when we recorded it, is WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah, that was yesterday.
It's 2 days, Sam. It's 2 nights.
It's a 2-night event?
Yeah, they started doing this last year because of COVID, and they didn't have any fans there. And so normally WrestleMania is like a 6 or 7 hour long thing. But because there wasn't going to be any fans there, they decided to split it up over 2 nights and make it a little bit more watchable and not awkward, because early on during the pandemic, wrestling did not know how to handle the no fans thing, and it was very, very weird and quiet. Now, WrestleMania, they have people there. It's not full, but they have, I think, too many people crammed into that stadium. But night 1 of WrestleMania was last night. Really enjoyed it. Very, very fun. It was one of those where there wasn't any like swerves where they were like, nope, we're going to have the bad guy do the thing and make everyone unhappy because we like to crush people's souls. Like all like the Cinderella stories happened. Everyone left feeling good. Maybe night 2 will be different tonight. But yeah, very much enjoying WrestleMania. And I have not been keeping up with wrestling quite as much as I used to lately. But it's nice to check in every once in a while with these big events that they have going on. And it made me miss because a couple of years ago for WrestleMania, I had a bunch of friends over. And that was a very fun time.
It was
because
fun.
Yeah, I invited like 15 friends over who had never watched wrestling or never really paid attention to wrestling, didn't know anything about it, over to watch WrestleMania. And it seemed like everyone had a real good time, even though they didn't really know any of the characters or anything.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So it made me want to do that again sometime in the future.
Yeah. I would definitely do that again.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the main thing I've been watching and thinking about this weekend, on top of trying to cram for our next episode, which is going to be all about Sesame Street. We're going to, like we talked about in the past, we can't talk about every episode of Sesame Street. We'll go nuts. But we're going to talk about the beginnings of Sesame Street next episode, which will be, we're going to talk about the first episode, the very first one. We're going to talk about some of the things that came before the first episode, which is the pitch reel that they created. And we're going to watch one of their test shows that they made before the actual pilot went on the air. By the time we're recording that episode next week, Sam, you already saw the Street Gang documentary as part of the Sundance thing, right?
It was part of, the Sundance, like remote viewing Sundance that they did this year. Yeah.
Right. And I am reading the book, Street Gang, that the documentary is partially based on. And if you want to watch that documentary, I'm excited to watch it. But it actually comes out digitally on demand. You can watch it at home the weekend before our Sesame Street episode comes out.
Yeah. It's good, too. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, the trailer recently came out, and it looks great.
It's not just about Muppets, which is really interesting. It's about how TV shows get made and, like all the other parts of Sesame Street that aren't the Muppets. And the Muppets, too. But also it's like the whole thing. And the human hosts are a big part of it. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, so we won't have a chance, for me, at least, to watch Street Gang by the time we're recording that episode. But At least I think it's getting our recommendation for you to check out maybe before you listen to the episode, so you'll have a little bit more context for Sesame Street and its beginnings.
Sesame Street origins.
And as always, we will tweet out a playlist of places that you can go and watch the early Sesame Street stuff on our Twitter account, which you can follow at Kermitment Pod. We'd like to thank our friend Tuna for creating the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. You can follow me on Twitter at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm at Slam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.